Hi everybody, in today's video I have two separate updates to share with you regarding the EB-5 Investor Visa Program. The first update is regarding a bipartisan bill that was introduced to improve the EB-5 visa program and to reauthorize the Regional Center program. The second update that I have to share with you has to do with the types of sources of funds that can qualify as the basis of an EB-5 investment. So make sure to stick around. Hi everyone, my name is Michael Ashuri and I'm a U.S. immigration lawyer based in Los Angeles, California. At my law firm, we work with clients from all 50 states and worldwide, and we regularly post videos to make sure that you're up to date with the latest immigration news and tips. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button now. So as I mentioned in today's video, we're going to talk about two separate updates regarding the EB-5 visa. The first update is regarding a bipartisan bill that was introduced to improve the EB-5 program overall and to reauthorize the Regional Center program. And the second update that I have to share with you is regarding a court case that was decided in 2020 that may have some exciting implications about potentially using unsecured loans as the basis of your EB-5 investment. So let's get started. So to start off, I want to give you guys a quick general overview about the EB-5 visa. What is the EB-5 visa? How does it work? And those details. So the EB-5 visa is an investor visa. And the way it works is that somebody can basically invest in a US business, and based on making that investment, the person can potentially qualify for a green card. Now, there are various requirements to get approved for an EB-5 visa. The investor has to invest either $1.8 million or potentially they could qualify for a reduced investment amount of $900,000 depending on where the business is principally located. In addition to making that investment, the investor also has to create 10 full-time jobs for US workers. And there are other requirements for the EB-5 visa as well. For example, the funds that the investor uses to invest in their business must come from a lawful source. So the funds have to be traced to some sort of lawful activity. And again, if these various requirements are met, somebody can qualify for a green card for themselves, for their wife, and their children under 21 years old based on making this investment. So overall, it's a very exciting program for those that are interested in pursuing a green card based on investment. So now with that general overview, let's get into our first update. And this update is that Senators Chuck Grassley and Patrick Leahy have introduced a new bill called the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2021. And the goal of this bill is to improve the EB-5 program and to reauthorize the Regional Center program until 2026. Now let me get into the details. So if somebody is considering making an EB-5 investment, they have two options. The person can either make a direct investment or they can invest in a Regional Center project. A direct investment is basically any example of somebody going out and either starting their own business or buying a business, what you would traditionally imagine to be an investment made in a business. Those are all classified as a direct investment. Now, there's also a Regional Center investment, basically when somebody invests in a Regional Center project. Regional centers are entities that are designated by USCIS to sponsor EB-5 projects. Usually these projects are large-scale developments such as hotels, resorts, sports arenas, etc. Now, if somebody chooses to invest in a Regional Center project, there are various advantages. For example, the way that USCIS calculates the total number of jobs that are created by the Regional Center project is more favorable compared to somebody that's making a direct investment. Additionally, EB-5 regional centers have the power to get something called an exemplar approval. An exemplar is basically a sample petition that's filed with USCIS. And if that petition is approved, it's almost as if USCIS is giving its stamp of approval regarding the business components of this particular project. Additionally, EB-5 regional center projects are typically managed by their own management group. So the individual investor doesn't have much involvement in the day-to-day operations of the business. So as you can see, regional center investments can be advantageous for the right candidate. However, there are two big issues with regional center projects. The first big issue is that the regional center program is a pilot program, meaning that it's not a permanent fixture of the EB5 program. The regional center program is essentially a temporary program that has continued to be extended over the years. Well, as of right now, the regional center program is set to expire at the end of June of this year. So in just a few months, the regional center program is set to expire. Additionally, over the years, there have been multiple instances of fraudulent projects that have taken funds from unknowing investors and have misappropriated those funds, causing the investors to lose money. So again, the two big issues with the regional center program are, for one, that it's set to expire at the end of June of 2021, in just a few months. Additionally, over the years, there have been multiple instances of fraud within the regional center program. Well, these are two issues that the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2021 seek to improve. Let me explain. Take a look at my screen and we'll go through some of the key points of this bill. So take a look at my screen. Over here, we're looking at a summary of the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2021. And as you see here, it's titled Reauthorizing and Reforming the EB5 Regional Center Program, and it's called the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2021. Now, it says here, in recent years, the program has come under intense scrutiny. Concerns have been raised related to national security and the program's susceptibility to fraud and abuse. So now, I want to go over some of the bullet points of this bill to show what it aims to do. Well, first and foremost, what's really important is that this bill extends the program through 2026. So again, as we mentioned earlier, the Regional Center program is set to expire at the end of June. This bill would extend the program through 2026. Now let's get into some of the provisions that the bill calls for to prevent against fraud and abuse. And it says here, it requires regional centers, which are responsible for overseeing EB5 projects, to have policies and procedures in place to protect against fraud. It requires that regional centers file proposed EB5 project business plans with the Department of Homeland Security. It requires more disclosures to investors regarding material business risks and conflicts of interest in EB5 projects. It requires that regional centers notify the Department of Homeland Security of significant changes to their structure. And it requires the Department of Homeland Security to audit regional centers every 5 years. It also requires that the Department of Homeland Security perform site visits to EB5 projects. This is huge. It's going to require actual site visits from the Department of Homeland Security. It also requires regional centers to provide annual statements to the Department of Homeland Security and to their investors, accounting for the investor capital and certifying compliance with program requirements. It also requires background checks of regional center and certain project principals, and requires that regional center principals responsible for overseeing the foreign investors' participation in the visa program be U.S. persons or lawful permanent residents. And there's a lot more to this bill as well, but for now, let's move on. So as we can see, this bill calls for many positive improvements and changes to the EB5 Regional Center program. For one, as we saw, it calls to reauthorize the Regional Center program through 2026. Additionally, it requires EB5 regional centers to provide additional disclosure to USCIS and to its investors. Additionally, this bill calls for the Department of Homeland Security to conduct site visits of regional center projects. This is huge. Now, an important point that I want to mention is that at this point, this bill is just a bill. It has not yet passed before the House or the Senate. For this bill to become law, it would have to pass before the House and Senate. So we're going to monitor to see what happens with this bill going forward. So now let's move on to my second update, which has to do with using unsecured loans as the basis of your EB5 investment. So as I mentioned earlier in this video, the EB5 visa has a source of funds requirement. It's very important to document that your investment funds came from a lawful source. Well, there have been many types of sources of funds that could qualify for EB5. For example, Let's say somebody has employment earnings through lawful employment. Somebody worked for their employer for 5 years and saved up their investment funds through their employment. That could potentially be a lawful source of funds. Or let's say somebody owns a property and sells that property and then takes the funds from that property to invest for their EB-5 visa. That could also potentially be a valid source of funds. Additionally, let's say somebody receives a gift of money from a friend. That gift could also potentially be a lawful source of funds. Now, with respect to loans, over the last many years, for a loan to work as a lawful source of funds, for EB-5 purposes, the loan had to be secured. Not only did the loan have to be secured, but it had to be secured by the investor's personal assets. The loan could not be secured by the investor's business assets related to the EB-5 business, and the loan could not historically be an unsecured loan. Well, in October of 2020, a court case was decided which appears to make clear that unsecured loans can also qualify as the basis of an EB-5 investment. So again, historically, if somebody wanted to use a loan as the basis of their EB-5 investment, the loan had to be secured by the investor's personal assets, their assets unrelated to the EB-5 business. However, this case that was decided in October of 2020 appears to make clear that unsecured loans could also qualify as the basis for an EB-5 visa. Now, I want to mention that this court opinion is relatively new. Again, it was decided in October of 2020, and EB-5 cases typically take roughly 18 months to process. So there's not a whole lot of data on how USCIS is ruling on cases where investors are relying on unsecured loans. So it may be preferable, if you have other sources of funds to choose from, to use those lawful sources of funds rather than relying on unsecured loans, just until we see what happens in the coming months. So now that we've gone through those updates, I want to give you a couple of quick takeaways. The first takeaway that I want to mention is that if you're intending on doing an EB-5 investment and you're planning on investing in a regional center project, you should make sure to be aware of the fact that as of right now, the regional center is set to expire at the end of June of this year, June of 2021. And although there's a bill that's been proposed, it has not yet passed and become law. So as of right now, we have to operate with the understanding that the regional center program is ending as of June of 2021. So if you're planning on making a regional center investment, you should make sure to do so before the deadline. That's the first key takeaway that I want to mention. The second key takeaway that I want you to be aware of is that, yes, there is this court opinion that states that unsecured loans are a valid source of funds. So if you have no other source of funds to rely upon, then you may wish to rely upon this court opinion. However, there isn't a whole lot of data regarding cases being approved using unsecured loans just because this court opinion is so new. And the third key takeaway that I want you to know is that regardless of what happens with the EB-5 reform bill, EB-5 direct investments will still be in place. So as we mentioned earlier, direct investments are when somebody either invests in their own business, starts a new business, or purchases an existing business. Those types of direct investments will still continue beyond June. They are not a part of the Regional Center pilot program. Those are more permanent fixtures. So direct investments will continue to go on, regardless of what happens with this bill. So there you have it. In this video, we discussed two important updates regarding the EB-5 program. The first update was that Senators Leahy and Grassley have introduced a bill to improve the EB-5 Regional Center program and to reauthorize the program through 2026. And the second update that we talked about was regarding the court case that was decided in October of 2020, which appears to make clear that unsecured loans can be used as a lawful source of funds for EB-5 purposes. I know that this was a lot of information. I hope you guys got a lot of value from this video and that you learned a lot. If you know anybody that could benefit from this information, make sure to share this video with them. We're all about empowering you with knowledge. So the more people that can watch this video that can benefit from this information, the better. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning into this video, and I'll see you on the next one.